This weekend, Illumination released their 13th animated film, the Super Mario Brothers movie. So today I'm going to rank all 13 Illumination films from the worst to the best. Coming out last place, number 13, is Hop. As a kid, I kind of enjoyed this movie, and it's fun to have an Easter movie, but the execution of the idea isn't very good. Now, it's not a horrible movie, but at times it can be very hard to get through. There's a fun side plot about the chickens trying to take over Easter, and I think the pink berets, who are a team of ninja buddies, that's kind of funny. But most of the jokes in this movie are lazy or highly inappropriate for a kid's movie. Mainly, a scene where the main character, who is a rabbit, visits the Playboy Mansion because it's home to, and I quote, sexy buddies. This is a kid's film. The plot is also very dumb with a lazy cliche message and ending. And considering this was Illumination's follow-up to Despicable Me, which was absolutely fantastic, this is a huge step down. Number 12, Sing 2. I'm honestly not sure what they were going for here with this film, because it seems like there were two conflicting ideas. It seemed like on the one hand, the filmmakers really wanted to make a tribute film to the band U2, but at the same time, they also wanted to make a film for kids. And the kids aren't going to be interested in the U2 tribute stuff because they're too young, and adults who are interested in the U2 stuff have to sit through 80 minutes of a thin plot and dumb jokes. The song choices for this movie are also bizarrely inappropriate at times, with many lyrics and some of the songs needing to be censored. And if you knew you were going to have to censor the lyrics because it's a kid's movie, then why pay for the licensing to use the song at all? It's a very thin plot that isn't very entertaining. Number 11, Sing. A movie that I'm honestly pretty indifferent on. When you really think about it, there's no reason for these characters to be animals. In a movie like Zootopia, which came out around the same time, the characters being animals expands the humor in a world. Here, the characters being animals is just kind of thing that they do for the sake of making it a talking animal movie. The plot also is, again, very safe, not that interesting, and though it does have some very good voice performances, it just isn't that memorable of a film. Number 10, The Lorax. Its message is heavy-handed to the point where even James Cameron would probably say it needs more subtlety. But as far as Dr. Seuss adaptations go, this is still one of the better ones. Now, there are some bizarre castings in this movie, mainly Zac Efron and Taylor Swift, who feel like they're in the film just because they're popular and not because they fit the role. But as far as the character of the Lorax goes, Danny DeVito was a perfect casting choice. He's funny, and the other forest animals get some laughs, and the songs in this movie are actually pretty catchy. The third act feels a bit rushed, and the message is heavy-handed, but it's still one of the more charming Dr. Seuss adaptations, because at least with this one, unlike Cat in the Hat or the Jim Carrey Grinch movie, you can tell they were at least trying to capture the spirit of the book. Number 9, Secret Life of Pets 2. To some degree, I think it is slightly better than the first one because it's more of an anthology movie, but at the same time, that's also a huge detriment, as it causes an issue with how the plot flows. This feels more like 3 episodes of a show rather than a movie, and the addition of Harrison Ford adds a bit of dry humor, and I wish they had used him more. At its core, this is a very sweet movie about pets and their humans, and it has a lot of heart put into it. The plot does have some issues towards the end with just how off-the-wall unbelievable it gets, and it didn't really need to go the direction it did, because at that point, it was hard to suspend my disbelief, even for a movie about talking pets. The story for the first 2 acts is fairly straightforward and simple, but by the time it gets to the third act, it feels like it loses the plot and just goes in a completely different movie. I laughed a couple of times, but this is definitely more of a kid's movie. Number 8, Minions. I know practically everyone hates this movie with a passion. I don't think it's that bad. Can it get annoying at times? Yes. But at the same time, it has some really funny jokes. There's a scene where a mad scientist has a bunch of clones of himself, and one of them accidentally kills the original, which causes all of them to disappear. There's a scene where the minions are in a dungeon, but none of the torture devices work on them, which leads to some really clever visual humor. And Sandra Bullock gives a fun and at times pretty funny performance as the villain. Though it can overstay its welcome at times, I still find it entertaining. Number 7, Secret Life of Pets. I don't have much to say about this movie because there isn't really much to say. It's practically the same plot template as Toy Story, but Kevin Hart is hilarious in this, and though its plot is a bit thin, it's a cute, harmless kids movie. It's enjoyable enough. I don't mind watching it. Number 6, The Grinch. The animation is the best part to this. It's delightfully exaggerated and looks straight out of the book, and Benedict Cumberbatch's The Grinch is a great choice. However, it does have the same issue that always arises when one tries to stretch out a 20-page book into a 90-minute film. There's not much plot to work with, or at least not enough plot to work with, so you need to add filler. The side plot about Cindy Lou Who trying to capture Santa isn't that interesting. I don't really care about the relationship with her and her mom. Some of the jokes also just feel like they're trying too hard, even if they don't really make sense. And the Grinch doesn't really come off as evil in this, or at least as evil as he is in the original cartoon. He just seems slightly grouchy. I feel they should have played up his meanness a bit more. But at the end of the day, this is still a better version than the Jim Carrey one because it feels genuine and not cynical. Number 5, Minions: The Rise of Gru. How much you enjoyed this film will depend on how much of a Despicable Me and Minions fan you are. For me, as someone who likes all these movies and thinks they're all pretty solid, I had fun with it. I thought the plot was a bit stronger than the first Minions film, and this time makes Gru the main character and keeping the Minions as supporting humor, though there are still quite a few scenes where the Minions are the focus, perhaps a bit too long. But ultimately, as the title The Rise of Gru implies, the main focus of the story is Gru and what inspired him to become a supervillain. The film is delightfully wacky, providing all the Three Stooges style and cartoon gags you come to expect from these films. The animation is vibrant. The references to 1970s culture, since that's the decade this film takes place in, are fun. There's a lot of great visual gags, and though the plot may have been able to flow a bit better in some parts, it still has a lot of creativity, especially the third act. The climax of this film is highly creative and hilarious. And if you're somebody who's a diehard Despicable Me fan, there are a lot of throwback references to things that will become important in other films, since it's a prequel. I thought the supervillain team who are the antagonists of this film were all clever. Their names are all very clever puns, and they really roll with it. If you're a huge fan of Despicable Me, you'll probably enjoy this film. You know exactly what you're getting. If you're someone who's getting tired of the franchise, probably isn't going to do much for you. But as for me, I thought it was hilarious, it was creative, it was entertaining, even if it is a bit familiar. Number 4, Despicable Me 2. This is a very mixed film. I do feel it expands upon the ideas of the first one by having Gru team up with Lucy and having him fall in love with her, and showing him trying to be a good father to his newly adopted daughters. But at the same time, the plot of this movie is really all over the place, and it way overuses the Minions. Number 3, Despicable Me 3. This one learned from the mistakes of the second one and realized, oh yeah, people like the Minions, but they like them in moderation, not for 80% of the movie like they do with Despicable Me 2. My biggest issue is that the villain in the film is underused. He's a former child star who's still mentally trapped in the 80s. That's a really funny idea, and what they do with him works, but I don't think they took that idea as far as they could. Instead, we get a dumb subplot about Agnes trying to find a unicorn, and it really pads the runtime. It's a good movie, but it should have used some of its time better. Number 2, Despicable Me. A charming, heartfelt movie that can be enjoyed by all. It's silly enough for the kids, but can also tug at the heartstrings of the adults. This is the Despicable Me movie that I think has the most emotion put into it, and I think this will be considered a classic animated film in about 20 years. It's got a fun plot, great characters, great animation, sharp humor, and isn't afraid to tug at the heartstrings. And coming at first place is the Super Mario Brothers movie. It took 12 years, but Illumination finally managed to make a film better than their first. They made a movie better than the original Despicable Me. This is a very crowd-pleasing film that can be enjoyed by everyone, even if you haven't played a Mario game in your life. The world of this movie is very bright and vibrant and is super fun to spend time in. The characters and world are incredibly well animated with a lot of expression. It's also careful not to be too exaggerated. And while the film moves a little fast, there's also not much plot to draw from the games, as honestly, they're relatively simple. The plot of all the games is Bowser captures Peach, Mario goes to rescue her. Next game, Bowser captures Peach, Mario goes to rescue her. Repeat that formula for 30 years. Again, very simple plot, not much to draw from, but that's also part of the charm, because it is so simple. And since the trailer came out, people were very divided on casting of Chris Pratt as Mario. In my opinion, I think for the most part, he did a great job. The voice acting in the film is nearly seamless, feeling true to the spirit of the characters, even though every once in a while, Pratt's real voice will slip through, but it's honestly not that big of an issue. And the best performance is Jack Black as Bowser. He steals the show, he has a ton of fun, he's unrecognizable, he does a really good job of disguising his voice, and the only time it really sounds like Jack Black is when he sings his villain song, but when he speaks, he really makes it his own, and he gives a voice that is perfect for Bowser. Really, the only performance I had a major issue with was Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong, and even then, it's not that it's a bad performance, it's just that it sounds just like Seth Rogen, like he's not even trying to disguise his voice, he's just being himself. It also makes it hard to separate too. I do have one or two issues, mainly there is an overuse of pop songs in this film that really don't fit. Like there's a training montage where Mario first encounters the Mushroom Kingdom, where he's trying to learn about the power-ups and how the world works, and the visuals of this film, straight out of the Mario platformers, but instead of using the actual Mario music from the games, which would have made sense and made this seem much better, they instead use catchy pop songs. So there aren't totally glaring issues, but they did somewhat leave me bewildered. Overall, though, I do think that the Super Mario Brothers movie is a wildly entertaining crowd pleaser. It's perfect for all ages, and is definitely worth the coins. It is Illumination's best film, even if it took 12 years for them to make a good follow-up to Despicable Me, and it comes in at number 1. Share and rank of the Illumination films or the ones that you've seen, and I will see you next time.